So how big of a Star Trek fan are you? How big of a science fiction fan are you?
Yes, science fiction, both in terms of literature and in terms of visual media like TV and film has very long been a part of my life.
The death of God is about the drying up of a horizon of meaning and of a whole form of human life.
All right, welcome to the Diet Soap Podcast. With me today is the author of the piece Stuck in a Time Loop, Mamdani and the Left's Amnesia. That's Dan Davison. Dan Davison is an independent scholar based in the UK and a patron. So I've spoken to you before, Dan. Glad to see you again on the podcast. You did a great job writing this piece for Sublation Magazine. And do you have anything you want to add to your bio there to tell people about yourself?
Thank you very much. Just to say a little bit more about myself. So, as I'm sure we'll get into as we dive into the article itself, I have a fairly long history on the left or the would-be left. I very much came into the left as a millennial leftist. I was very much caught up in the Corbyn moment over in the US. Sorry, all the way around. The Sanders moment over in the US and the Corbyn moment here in the UK. And I suppose that time frame, 2015-16, is when I really started to get properly active politically. I'm also a member of the Platypus Affiliated Society, although I actually was not yet a member at the time that I wrote and submitted this article. In terms of my scholarship, I suppose the main areas of my research to date have been, on the one hand, in intellectual history and social theory, especially looking at what we call classical German social theory. So people like Max Weber, Georg Simmel, sort of foundational figures in the modern discipline of sociology from the turn of the 20th century. That's one major strand of my work. The other is in utopian/dystopian studies and science fiction studies, which probably has a lot to do with why I chose the framing that I did for this particular article.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Mamdani to start with. Why are you not on the Zohran Mamdani train? Is it just because of your experiences as a millennial leftist? Or are you thinking about sociologists like Max Weber? What made you skeptical to begin with Mamdani?
Well, in the most direct sense, yeah, it was that curious feeling of having been here before. Actually, let me put this slightly differently. I'm aware, especially with the kind of critical reflecting and thinking that I've been doing over the last few years, about this much longer and deeper history of the left seeming to not learn from its own mistakes and repeat them. But what made the Mamdani moment hit in such a curious way is that this is something that happened so recently, right? This reminds me of so much that happened in my own generation within just the last 10 years, and yet and yet there was that unshakable feeling that all of that's already been memory hold. And I'm not only talking about, say, Zoomers who are a few years younger than me and therefore weren't involved in the millennial left the way I was. I'm seeing people from my generation, people older than me, who experienced all that alongside me, who are all just getting on the bandwagon as if those last 10 years didn't happen at all, right? And it was that real sense of we've already forgotten something that just happened to us that made me want to write this article so badly.
So, okay. I mean, on the surface, it seems to me obvious why this is repetition. However, I would also point out that there were people even before Mamdani appeared on the scene who were saying in 2023 that maybe Bernie Sanders should run again. There's a feeling of there's a kind of clinging to the Sanders social democratic turn that I think defines a certain segment, maybe more than half of the socialist left even today. So do you think Mamdani is simply an extension of that? And what lessons did you learn that these others did not? Or do you feel like it was learned by most and now it's being forgotten?
I suppose it depends on. It depends in part on which sections of the left you have in mind, because I do definitely remember after Corbynism here in the UK and after the Sanders moment in the US, there were quite a fair number of leftists who I knew who were thinking along the lines of, despite all of our best efforts, we ended up getting caught up in capitalist politics. We need to really rethink what it would mean to develop an independent socialist working class politics, what it would take to get us there. So there was quite a bit of that. I remember in my old milieu. Mm-hmm. But of course, as you rightly indicate, there were other sections of the left who were still clinging to that millennial neo-social democratic turn, wanted to try again. What's perhaps curious about Mamdani is that in certain respects, leftists I know who were critical of Bernie in certain respects. So for example, the kinds of leftists who very much supported this idea of being able to bring together, on the one hand, materialist, as they would see it, concerns around housing, pay, etc. on the one hand, and sort of liberation politics concerns on the other, what we can broadly call identity politics. So people sort of see, at least a lot of the left seems to see Mamdani as successfully bringing those together in a way that they perhaps didn't think Sanders had done so. So for at least some sections of the nominal socialist left, Mamdani arguably represents a kind of improvement or advance on Sanders, whereas my view is that both the side of the left that's very nostalgic for the post-war welfare state and the side that goes all in on identity politics are actually two sides of the same coin. These are two directions in left politics that actually come out of a shared source in the history of the left. And that isn't really recognized by most leftists.
You know, it's always been a little odd to me how Bernie Sanders was criticized for not being adequately concerned with identity politics issues, because he had a long history of defending civil rights and gay rights and taking all the right stances on those issues. I wonder what the difference is between Mamdani and Bernie Sanders on that front. Can you point to some of the differences?
I suppose what some people would point to is things like Mamdani being very vocal about issues like trans healthcare, something that is at the same time a materialist support issue that appeals to, shall I say, the more traditional social democratic left, but at the same time very directly signals that identity-based concern. So that might be one difference.
So, I mean, in the case of Sanders, he also had expressed a support for trans people, and I think for gender affirming care for quite a long time. You know, certainly in 2016. Is it a matter of just how that support is positioned, or how much of an emphasis is placed on that support, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, I suppose it is. I suppose it is ultimately a matter of emphasis. Like I said, I'm not saying I myself believe that Sanders paid insufficient care to identity issues or anything like that. And I suppose the differences in emphasis might come in large part from the current context of the second Trump term, i.e. Lots of the issues that Mamdani is being very vocal about, non-cooperation with ICE, sanctuary cities, not only for immigrants but for LGBT plus people, for people seeking abortions from other states. Again, all of these are very much being positioned very vocally against the Trump administration.
Right. And so it really is a matter of the moment recontextualizing what might be actually fairly standard Democratic Party positions on the progressive left.
Oh yeah, and as I go into in my article, those two sides of progressivism actually do have a very long shared history together. So I'm not surprised that the present moment has perhaps recontextualized quite a standard progressivist outlook in this way.
Right. Just to go over the policies as you outline them in your piece, it said they're redistributive policies that would expand the public sector, and it would include rent freezes, subsidized childcare, fare-free buses, city-owned grocery shops, building affordable housing, and raising the minimum wage to $30 an hour by 2030. So this is coupled with his commitment to trans healthcare, gay rights, sanctuary cities, reproductive rights, and his refusal to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. So he has also, I guess, taken up the Palestinian cause, rhetorically at least. Mm-hmm. And so altogether, it just makes him, he's just checked all the right boxes for the most progressive wing, or the most progressive voters.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the difficulty is if you like the idea of lower rents or free childcare or free healthcare, or helping immigrants resist deportation, or hopefully ending the slaughter in Gaza. The difficulty is that these are not only empty promises, but will likely lead to unintended and possibly opposite results. Right?
Very possibly. I mean, as you've discussed with previous guests on this podcast, this would be far from the first time that a politician who considers themselves a socialist has become the mayor of a major US city, right?
Right. And so the for me, well, let me just ask you, from your perspective, when the left champions Mamdani, is it a form of resignation, do you think? Are they resigned to just repeating the same mistakes and kind of throwing up their hands at the possibility of actually accomplishing even baby steps towards workers' power?
I suspect that different parts of the left would frame it in different ways. Yeah, broadly speaking, yeah, I would consider it a kind of resignation, if only because the kinds of political horizons that people are talking about now seem so low, even compared to the 2015-16 moment. Because, back then, people were still at least discussing and debating questions of what it would take to establish independent socialist politics. People were debating the question of a party for the left or for the working class, what might need to be done in order to establish one, how do we get there? This was all very much in the air in those mid to late years of the 2010s. I was there. I was very active in those circles. I was in DSA myself at that time. I was in very close contact with people in the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, in Solidarity. These were the kinds of matters that we were discussing among ourselves. I'm seeing virtually none of that this time around. It's not even framing Mamdani in terms of what could be baby steps towards some kind of independent force for workers' power, and insofar as that represents a broader acceptance of lowered horizons, yeah, I would call that a form of resignation.
Right. The what they've taken up instead is the promise to be able to defeat and counter at least Donald Trump, right? So rather than
Absolutely
building a working class party that would actually seek political power on a new basis, they now have lowered their horizons to the level of simply supporting and helping the Democrats defeat a rival. And the sad thing is, I don't think Mamdani is much of a counter to Trump.
Oh God, no.
but this is the what they're really investing in is the idea that through someone like Mamdani, they can recapture working class and pro-labor voters and maintain their base within what they imagine is various minority communities in the nation, but which is mostly a white educated class around identity politics. So it's sort of sad because it won't even accomplish its goals, as even though they are the product of diminished expectations.
Yeah, and of course, if even those diminished expectations end up not being satisfied, which, for the reasons you've just outlined, is quite a likely possibility. There's a chance that this will only lead to even more disillusionment, even more disarray, and even more resignation.
Right. So what is the process here? You use the metaphor of being stuck in a time loop, and you refer to an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, which I do remember, actually, where they've gotten trapped. But why is it that we're in this loop? What do you think the mechanism is here that or the psychological state or the political impasse is that it sets us up to do this kind of repetition?
I suppose ultimately it's the lack of any kind of constituted vehicle on the left that is capable of transmitting the lessons of the experiences of previous mistakes and defeats. One of my favorite Rosa Luxemburg pieces, Order Prevails in Berlin, in fact, the last thing that she wrote before she dies, has this wonderfully evocative passage where she talks about how the socialist revolution is distinct because it's a victory that is necessarily paved to by defeats, but each defeat makes the working class movement stronger because it learns the lessons from that defeat until the final victory comes. But of course, Luxemburg's writing that at a time when she could assume the existence of, say, a party of a mass workers' movement for socialism, part of a real movement in history that is capable of absorbing the lessons of those past defeats. And in the absence of anything that can serve as that, what Lenin memorably called the memory of the class, without that, the would-be left is virtually setting itself up to never learn from its past experiences and keep making the same mistakes.
Right. So the problem is that there is no institutional support for the maintenance of memory. Right? That's what you're saying basically? But there must be forces that are actually suppressing memory or erasing our memory at the same time, because you and I remember. There must be, it is possible without a party to remember things. But and there are podcasts like this one and publications that should have an institutional memory, but appear not to. So that I think your explanation is good, but it seems like it's only half the story to me. There's got to be something else going on.
Oh yeah, and of course, in those classic pieces by Luxemburg, Lenin, etc., we are talking about something that's not only a source of institutional memory, to use that phrase, but also something that is capable of embodying this more substantial and active consciousness of the movement in history. But taking it to the more mundane level, okay, there's clearly plenty of us who remember, who have tried to transmit the lessons of our experiences, yet it doesn't seem to be getting through or getting picked up the way we're hoping. Yes, there is a lot of suppression on the left, and I'd say a lot of it comes from the left's own unwillingness to recognize its own defeats as defeats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. If you see something like what happened with the Sanders moment and the millennial left as a self-liquidation by a nascent attempt to reconstitute the left, a lot of people are going to resist that way of remembering it because it would feel like it was all for nothing, right? It would feel like we're back to square one. So there is this incredibly strong appeal to being able to see forward steps in what is actually regress and defeat.
Yeah, that's something that I was even aware of at the time, because I started podcasting in 2009, right, during the Obama administration, and then by 2016, I had been running Zero Books for a couple of years, a year and a half maybe. And what I noticed after the election of Trump was that suddenly my podcast and Zero Books both were getting a lot more attention than they had before, and that it was getting easier to grow than it had been before. And there was excitement and energy around Marxism and the left in a way that there hadn't been quite before. It had been more of a fringe topic. There was still, even after 2008, there was some serious interest in Marxism, which is what I think, from my point of view, was what brought the millennial left into full fruition, was the economic crisis of 2008. The platypus line is it started with the war on terror, but I think that it was really given a new purpose after the economic crisis. But still, in 2016, suddenly it was a lot easier. Views went up, donations went up, book sales went up. And to see all that happen and recognize that excitement was actually a symptom of the self-liquidation of the millennial left that had been building up to that point is kind of counterintuitive and depressing. And for people who felt success and got affirmed in that moment, is, I think, particularly difficult to accept that they're, from the start, their rise as someone who might be of some prominence and import and who had a voice, all of it was a reflection of the defeat of the very thing that they were supposedly advocating. That's tough, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think back on the overall trajectory of people in my generation. I remember all the buzz around the anti-austerity protests at the tail end of the 2000s and early years of the 2010s. I remember that starting to stumble, and then many of the same people who were involved in that in the UK, they go into the Labour Party. In the US, they get caught up in standards. It's like we spent several years first being attracted to quite, shall I say, anarchist inflected politics, it not quite working out. Then we switch over to a new attempt at social democratic politics. That doesn't work out. And so at the end of it, we find ourselves thinking, well, what was it all for? We tried these two, at least on the surface, very different directions to get here, and yet in the end, it all seemed to go out with a whimper. Yes, that is an incredibly difficult thing to try to wrap your head around and sit with emotionally.
Yes. And I'll just describe my experience a little bit here, which is that up until the defeat of 2020 of the Sanders campaign, it was possible for me to view the fluctuations of interests on the left as somehow sensical and perhaps even progressive. That, for instance, up until 2011, there had been a growing dissatisfaction with the economic situation, and with capitalism, but it seemed to really be clearly expressed with Occupy Wall Street, right? This dissatisfaction. And then there was a step back into identity politics for a while through Black Lives Matter. But with the rise of Sanders, it seemed like, okay, we're returning to a more socialist politics. We're not, we're less distracted. We can see how the struggle for Black freedom and Black equality in the United States is tied to an economic struggle and a class-based struggle. But then, by the time Sanders was defeated a second time in 2020, and after that, I became disenchanted with where the left went next, and so did most people. To put it differently, like after 2016, the left saw a quasi revival, but after 2020, the left has seen a decline, and certainly after this last election, the left and the Democrats have seen a major decline, which is why I think there's so much hope, the possibility for forgetting around Mamdani, because he would seem to indicate, despite the doldrums, despite the lack of support amongst most people, there is still a much stronger base for the left than we have been led to believe. That he is our great hope, because look, he's going to become mayor of New York City, and he can find working class support in New York City to become a socialist mayor. So look, there's actually more strength there than we thought. I think that's maybe the mentality that we're dealing with.
Oh, I definitely think that's a major dimension, and of course, there's the context of people hoping that by implementing these, as they see it, socialist policies in New York, and standing up to Trump, then maybe we'll see another revival, what we would see as a quasi revival of the left and of socialism, by seeing it successfully taking on Trump, standing up for the people that the Trump administration targets or leaves let down.
Mm-hmm. So we've sort of outlined the character of this time loop, but it still is surprising to me that the left people I know are so quick to believe in Mamdani, because despite my explanation for their, my outlining of their thinking, it does seem to me a sort of shallow or thin version of what's come before. I mean, if you compare it to, say, something that might not seem so plausibly comparable, but the support for Syriza that was international, right? There were reasons to be skeptical of Syriza from the beginning, but there wasn't the Syriza didn't seem to be acting in such obvious bad faith at the start. There's something about Mamdani, and I haven't. Maybe I'm just biased, or maybe I've attuned my cynicism to the right frequency. But he does seem to me to be particularly false in some way to me. Like there's something about it that just strikes me as very much of the party that was behind our defeat over the last decade. We were defeated by these people. The left was defeated by the Democratic Party, and all of its different progressive operatives. We were, we suffered entryism from the progressives, and if we were infiltrated by the progressives, and then we were defeated by the progressives. I think so. I guess maybe in my most cynical moments, what I think is, those who are so quick to glom onto Mamdani were actually just those very infiltrators that I'm worrying about. There are more of them than us all along. I don't know. What do you think, Dan? Am I become paranoid?
Yeah. Well, maybe some of them are just those same infiltrators. Some of it might be people of my generation who still find a certain appeal in a certain, shall I say, Obama-style slickness, which I think Mamdani reminds me more of than the kind of presentation style that, say, Bernie had.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, there is just the deep ideological confusion over the relationship of progressivism and socialism in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So much of that fed into the millennial left's self-liquidation in the name of stopping Trump that perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised that that's putting these ideological blinkers on people who in the present who went through that in a way that didn't teach them the fundamental difference between them. Putting it differently, if your fundamental view of socialism is that it's maxed out progressivism, that it's generous social welfare plus equality rights, then of course Mamdani is going to appear as one of us, whatever slight misgivings you might have about him as an individual politician.
Right. What's interesting to me is that sometimes people who I know, I'll say it this way. I imagine there are people who have spent the last decade arguing over minutia, like what is the relationship between the labor theory of value and prices, or who've spent time putting down modern monetary theory, or who would be very quick to argue against Andrew Yang and his UBI, and so on and so forth, who still will embrace Mamdani. So it's a complicated thing, and I think ultimately, how do you conclude? Let's look at how you conclude this. You say that we need to transmit enough of a message to ourselves so we can get out of this time loop that we're in. But it does seem to me that part of what we'll need to accomplish is something that is strong enough to present itself to the left as the better, more interesting, more living alternative to a Mamdani. As long as all there is Mamdani, or kind of confusion and or obscurity, then Mamdani will win. We all have to build something, right?
Yeah. So something that's stronger, something that feels more living, something that's something that is more rooted in civil society against state, and something that is willing to be intellectually and politically forthright. Now, I'm not going to pretend I have any simple solutions in mind of how we put together such a fourth. I mean, this, after all, this is something that we talk about frequently, for example, on the Patreon in relation to the campaign. But these are still the issues that the would-be left needs to be grappling with today, right? Otherwise, we're not even going to be able to throw that message in a bottle forward, in the hopes that it will be picked up and understood such that our future iterations will know what to do to break the cycle at last.
Well, listen, we've been talking for 45 minutes. I think that what you just said is a great place to end this first half. I ask you to stick around for a parrot room conversation if you have time, and we can talk a little bit more in a more meandering way about your history on the left and about what it will take to create that message in the bottle, if nothing else. So thank you for coming on to the Diet Soap podcast. I'm going to end it there. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons help to make sure that Sublation Media can continue to provide interviews, videos, books, and articles that are critical of the left from the left. If you are tired of remaining stuck within bourgeois ideologies and politics, help us sublate them both.